everyone, my name's Lance and welcome to Bundy Bear's Shed. Today we're going to do a bit of a clip on resealing a CAV DPA, which is a rotary injection pump, which the Fergie 65 we bought a week or two ago. It has a leaky injection pump. It's leaking diesel externally, not into the engine, so it's mainly just the top shafts, the main throttle shaft and the stopper shaft that are leaking, but we have a kit to do the whole pump. And so just for the sake of the video, we're going to strip a pump down. We'll pull it off the tractor, we'll strip it down, and we'll put every seal, every O-ring and copper washer and all back into it, and just show you how we do it. I've seen some clips on YouTube about how to do it. Well, it's how other people do it. I don't necessarily do it that way. This is the way I do it, and that's not saying the other people are doing it wrong either. Just means there's a couple of ways of doing the one job. So stay tuned. I'll go and grab the pump off the tractor, and yeah, we'll pop it apart and I'll explain it as best I can and how I do it, and hopefully it'll encourage you to have a bit of a go on your own. It's not as scary as it looks. The big diesel shops and the diesel fellas, they tell you, oh, don't go in there, it's all scary. Well, it's not. Most people have a go at, say, a small hydraulic valve or something like that, and sometimes they're way more complicated than a little injection pump. So the idea of the video is to fix my tractor, because I don't like having a fuel leak on it, but and the other is to make a clip of what we do, and yeah, hopefully it'll give you a bit of encouragement to have a go yourself. So I'll go and get the pump, and yeah, we'll be back in a minute. Before you start a job on your tractor, just make sure you take the key out, put the key in a safe place where you know where it is, and come around and take one or both battery terminals off. And when you have your fingers around the fan or anything like that, it's just best to do it. It's a safety thing. When you have this injection pump off, the last thing you want is someone to well, just turn the key and try and, without the timing gear being supported, your fuel injection pump timing gear or drive gear being supported, hit the key. You can do all sorts of damage. So as a safety thing, and for yourself, for your own personal safety, and so you don't damage anything on the tractor, take those terminals off. It takes a minute to do, and well, you're just mad if you don't. You probably think accidents won't happen to you, but they'll happen. You'll have your day. So yeah, safety first. Make sure before you get started you do that. This is the injection pump on the side of the tractor, and when you pull the throttle to go faster, this shaft here goes back and forth, and where it goes into the housing, that's where it's leaking. The stopper shaft, when you pull the stopper, this bloke here moves. It's not leaking as much as the other, but anyway, we'll reseal the whole lot. To get it off, there's a plate on the front of your timing cover here. We'll have to undo that. Around here there's 3 bolts that hold the pump on. Just for a reference point, we'll time the tractor first. I'll show you how to do that, and then we'll pop the pump off and take it over to the bench, and we'll get stuck into it. Bits flying everywhere. Before you actually unbolt the injection pump off the side of your timing cover, have a look on the outside corner there, and if you can see, I'll try and keep the light there. There's a little line here, another one coming back there. Those 2 lines are where your pump is timed to. So before you pull the pump off, clean those housings up, check for those 2 marks, and actually check that they are in line. That'll just come handy later on when you bolt the pump back on. If you bother to look that they're in line now, you'll know that they're in line when you go back, and you can put the pump back and not have any timing troubles at all. Just another note on timing. You don't necessarily have to do this, but I just like to check on myself. On the diamond shaped plate on the side, if you take that off, there's a circlip with a flat edge on it. and I've lined that up with the letter B. There's a letter B up here, the flat of the circlip is here, and what I like to do is line that letter up, the letter B. In this case, other pumps it may be letter G, or there's a few letters around the head there, so choose one. And what I also do is on the back of the timing cover here, there's a little mark right in the middle of this hole on the top there. There's a small line. I think it might be better without the torch. And then inside the cover there's a line as well, and that's the timing mark on the flywheel. And in this instance, I'll try and get over there without, yeah, you can see the line there. And then inside it's lining up between 20 and 24 degrees. We have a bolt here to undo, and in the front cover there's 3 bolts with lock tabs. We undo them, and once we undo them, this whole pump comes off to the back. It just slides out of the gear. You can't go wrong with the timing going and back in. Where those 3 bolts are, the main pump drive has a dowel, and the pump must go on in the same place again. So I'll get the pump off and I'll be able to show you that. Well, we have the pump off the machine, in the vise, and we haven't given it a bath yet. There's little bits of dirt here and there, but look, that's no problem just at the moment. At this stage, it'll get a good bath before it goes back together. But what I like to do now is pop these pipes off. This is where your injector lines go, and the reason we lock them off is there's copper washers under them, and the early pumps had copper washers. The later pumps had steel washers under them, and in the kit we get new steel washers for these. So these, I try and keep them in the same order. And start at the top, using this as 12 o'clock, work our way around. So there's one at 2, one at around 5. One at 7 and one at 11, close enough. And while the pump's still here, we're going to unbolt this back plate, but before we do, where the fuel goes into the pump, we'll just crack that, just because it's nice and easy to do it now. And then there's 4 bolts that hold this little fuel inlet in. And there's a little transfer pump in here. There's small vanes in it, and we'll have a look at the condition of those. I don't know whether you knew or not, but there's an extra gauze in here, so after the fuel comes through the gauze in the fuel tank, it then comes through your fuel lift pump. There's a little sediment gauze in there. It goes through your primary fuel filter, your secondary fuel filter, and then it comes down in this pipe at the back. And when it comes in here, there's also another tiny little gauze. So that's our end plate. We'll just take the bolts out of that, put them over on the bench. We'll undo the top. Now you do have to be a little bit careful here. Inside there's a spring with a little guide on the end of it. I'll just bump this on the bench for a second. There's another little spring which needs to come out. And there should be a little plunger. That's your plunger guide. There's a small plunger in here, and that's a suction screen. The screen comes off. There's a new one in the kit. We don't need to keep that. Now in the inside here, I'll find an O-ring pick. Or a screwdriver. Now that little plunger comes out down there. That should be a nice sliding fit. It should drop through there under its own weight. And you should be able to shake it back and forth, but that's a little bit tight. With it being tight, all that is it's a bit of tarnish. Yeah, the diesel leaves like a brown lacquer on things, and so that'll clean up okay. Another thing to look for is way down the bottom in the hole here, there's a little spring, and the little spring, I'll see if it'll bump out. There it is, and you'll notice the little spring has a little crosshair on it, both top and bottom. Doesn't matter which way that goes in, but what it does, I'll get this plug out again, is when this, at the bottom of the plunger here, you have your guide, then your plunger, and the plunger comes down against the little flat piece on that spring, and it just stops this plunger going down too far. If your tractor doesn't start, you can't get fuel through the pump, sometimes that little tit's broken off the spring, this plunger drops too far down, and your vane pump at the end of the housing here can't get enough pressure to put pressure into the head of the pump, so it's well worth a little look there. We've just changed the camera angle around a little bit, and this is the end. That's where that plate went. Now when you put that plate on, there's a small roll pin here. It doesn't stick up by much. It locates this collar here. Take note of that, and when your pump turns, there's a little vane pump in the end there. That just turns around, and that just gives you a bit of extra pressure in your head. There's two vanes. I'll bring them back a bit. Yep, you can see that. The vanes have a cutout in each of them. They're both the same part number. They go together like that. I've seen these broken and still working, but you can buy that as a separate part number. You can buy them if there's damage to them. This around here is a rubber seal that's often gone hard. That seals the end of the housing off. And this piece here, your rotor, it often turns. Well, this one's not, that little locating tag there is there to help stop it turning. So that's all you need to do at the end here basically. Just strip that down. Look at all the dirt and that around here. Dirt's just a killer with injection pumps, so at this stage I don't get too worried if there's a little bit of dirt around. Everything gets washed and the gasket surface is cleaned and everything like that. So while we are looking at the pump, that's the end that the timing gear goes on. Now see, there's a little dowel there, and the gear that drives the pump has a small dowel there as well. So it's just not possible to put this pump back on that gear wrong. The dowel will locate there, and if you do get it wrong, say it's up here, it is possible for it to push the dowel forward through the gear, but then you won't be able to fit the plate and the bolts on, so you'll certainly notice it. So yeah, keep your eyes open, keep your wits about you. But that's what I was speaking about before with those 3 bolts. There's a lock tab on that, and inside there's an Allen key. I looked at one video on doing these pumps, and they said you need a special tool to undo that. You won't get it undone otherwise. Look, I'll show you how to do that. You don't need that. If you have oil, if you have diesel leaking into your sump, the first and cheapest thing to do is look at your little fuel lift pump, your transfer pump. There's a little handle underneath to pump it through to prime this. But the second place it can leak is in behind this main drive here. There's a lip seal, and you need to undo this Allen key. This whole piece, just that little drive, it's master splined. It will just come out, and you can put the new seal in and pop it back on again. But I've seen people say you can't do that. Don't do it. It's impossible to do it without the tool. Well, I know, I've done it for years. I didn't know I had to have a special tool. When I started doing them, I'm an old tractor mechanic, and I'd often end up out the back of beyond. You'd never know where you would end up, and it just wasn't sensible to travel back 50, 60 kilometres just for something like this, when you could just get someone going. And every tractor that's broken down is urgent. Well, most times they are. So yeah, I just didn't know that we had to have a special tool. We worked out how to do it, and away we went. So I'll show you what we do, and yeah, we'll pull a few more things off. This fitting on the top of the drive, that just comes undone. Now, some of these, this one hasn't, but some of these have a little check valve there, and the check valve keeps a little bit more pressure in the main housing of the pump. This one's clear. I'm not doing real good focusing today, I don't think. But yeah, this one's nice and clear, and the only reason we're undoing that is so we can put a new washer on here and get it out of the way. But next we'll move on to the top. Now, with the top, I'll just move this camera slightly. With the job on doing the top up, if you only want to do the top cover, of this pump, there's no need to take the pump off the machine. If, as in our case, you just have fuel leaking out of the stopper shaft here, or your main throttle shaft, you can undo this and do it on the tractor. No need to take it off at all. Because this is my tractor, and I thought it'd be interesting to make a video on doing the pump, that's why we have the pump off here. But if you need to replace this gasket here, there's a top cover gasket, the O-rings on these shafts, or there's thick fibre washers under these nuts. If you need to do that, no need to take the pump off. Leave it on there. It's certainly easy to do. Right, this is the top cover of the pump. Just down here is the diamond plate we saw before. This is the bleed screw. That's the bleed screw in the top. So if you don't need to pull the pump off and you just want to pull this top cover off, there's two acorn nuts on the top. They don't go all the way through. There's two acorn nuts, you undo those. Usually makes a bit of a mess when you pull it off, but we have the plate off the side down low here now, so we shouldn't have to worry so much. And there we go, the cover comes off. Now there's a big pothole here. I'll try and explain where you can go drastically wrong here. There's nothing to it if it's explained to you. I'll try and get a torch there. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, we've just lifted the top off. Now I've turned the pump around so you can see it a bit better. But this is where you need to keep your wits about you. The pothole to fall into here is between the top cover and the governor plate here. This plate there. There's a spring. You can just see the spring there. Now, if you can see the governor plate, there's 1, 2, 3 holes in it. And you'll see on the bottom hole in this case there's a little rivet, which is this fella here. So that rivet has a small spring on it, and that rivet comes through and hooks in, it has a hole in it, and the spring comes in from the back. I'll try and get a good view there again. And yeah, you can see the spring coming in here. So the main thing at this part of the job is take note which hole it's in. Write it down somewhere. Different pumps on different things can use either one of those 3 holes. So take note of which hole it is, and you won't be scratching your head wondering later. There is a code on the side of the pump that tells you where it was, but most people won't have that available to them. So make sure that, that when you pull this off, have a look at that plate, see where the spring is, and take note of what hole it's in. It's important. Now that's the view with the top cover taken off. There's a little rod here that pushes back and forth. That little hook there, there's a little hook on the housing here, there. And when you put the top back on, it's important for that tit there to go into the eye of that there. So what you end up with, if I can try and wangle this for you, is that. And as you move the stopper, that pushes or pulls on there. So when you put the top on, just keep an eye that that's lined up. The other little pothole in this job is in this top shaft here. Now this is your throttle shaft. Now see the little lever there? I'll find my pointer again. Now see the little lever? You have the lever here, you have a plate with 3 holes in it. 1, 2, 3. You notice this spring is in the one closest to the pivot. That's what you have to look at also. It can be in either one, so you need to make sure that you take note on which hole it is in here, and the other end of the spring, take note which hole it's in there. And that's it. There's not much else to get tripped up on with these pumps. I'll pull a few more bits off and explain as we go. Now we'll continue on, just undo a few bits and explain a few things. You might hear the roof creaking. We're in a big steel shed and the sun's just come out. It's 27 degrees in Bundy today. It's a couple of days into spring, so things are looking good. But there's a couple of lock tabs on these bolts here. Unscrew those. Take them out of your way. That plate there will now come out of your way. Oh, I've forgotten to that one. I'm sitting that low on the camera. I'd forgotten about it. We'll undo him. This plate then comes off. That comes out. That plate sits down in the governor housing. This little valve here is a little metering valve. We just need to clean that up later a little bit. I have had, if a pump gets a little bit of water in it, and they just get a bit of water in their fuel, and they say all of a sudden that there's water or there's fuel coming into their pump, but nothing coming out. I have had these stuck in the bore, and it just won't open up to let fuel in. And when the stopper pushes back on that shaft, it pushes it backwards, and that blocks the fuel off. So when you pull the shaft here and pull the spring pulls on the shaft to let it kick into gear once more. It'll bind on this little shaft here. So sometimes just pulling that out and having a quick look is all you need to do. But once again, this is a job that you can do without taking the pump off the tractor, just if you need to. We can undo, now we've got that metering valve out, we can actually undo these screws around here, and we should be able to pull the head out, and we can undo this other end here and replace that seal as well. And what we'll end up with is an almost bare housing. The cam should be able to move, but there's a reason I don't strip it completely, and when we come to that I should be able to show you. Sometimes with these fuel injection pumps, you'll see it actually leaking around this housing here. And what the diesel blokes will tell you is don't touch it, you've got to pull it into us. And I don't know how it works, but I've never taken a fuel injection pump into a big shop to be repaired where it wasn't buggered. You take it in there and there's always $1,000 to spend. So I've taken all the bolts out round the outside now, there's a few of them, and the bleed screw. We've taken the metering valve out. This housing here just slides in. There's the O-ring that can leak on you. So you can take this out. That's your main pump head. These screws here adjust your maximum minimum fuel. We don't really need to do that, but there is a couple of plungers here that run on the cam. I might pull that apart, I know how to get it back to where it is. And I'll just show you what's inside, and if you ever need to do it, you might feel like heading down that path. And in the end of the pump here is your cam track, and that's what the little rollers go in and out on that makes it pump. That can come out, it just slides out. You can't put that in wrong. And what you look for in here is sometimes the hardening goes on the cam track. If the hardening goes, it's only a matter of time before you'll have to replace it. And another thing I do, which I'd like to, I like to explain, is in the end there's that circlip that has the flat end on it. Now, on a test bench, when they put it on a test bench, they pump it up back through the head, and when it just locks, they line that circlip up with the line on the pump. So there's no need to take that out. Leave that circlip where it is, and by leaving that where it is, if you want to go back later on, look through the sidewall here and do your timing. Your timing is in the exact same place as it was before. So I choose to leave that in. I've seen other videos where they just take it and rip it out and put it back in again. But putting it back in again, it's not going to affect the working of the pump at all. But if you'd like to keep the original factory settings, which I'd like to do that, leave that circlip alone. There's no need to take it out from here. Right, for all those interested in taking this pump drive out, your front shaft out, what I do, I've taken 2 screws from the gear, where the gear sits on the front here. I've taken 2 of those screws and screwed into the holes so we don't damage the thread. I put a screwdriver in there. These are quite tight sometimes. Look at that. That wasn't tight at all. Now that screws right out. It looks like I could have undone the bolt a bit further. There we go, no special tools needed. I'll bring that back and try and focus it for you. No special tools needed. Like I say, I never knew I needed them. The inside is your governor weights. There's a seal. Screwdriver. there's a lip seal in here. And that's it, and that's the seal. See, that's quite hard. And that's the seal. Sometimes through the front seal on your injection pump, it drops oil into your sump. So what you can do, without having to pull all the back part of your pump apart, you can just undo the front here, slide that out, and usually you can, well, I've had no trouble lining them back up again in here just to do a quick fix, but yeah, that's how I do that part. Now, I said about that circlip. If you want to get the weight basket out, see the whole governor setup can't come out because of that circlip. So I don't take it out. As I explained before, I don't normally need to. Pardon me. I don't normally need to. The reason I pull the pump out is not because it's not working properly, it's because it's leaking. This tractor started well, run well, was responsive on the governor. I do have a bit of a look, mate, see if there's anything I can see along the way, but there's no real need to pull this out. Now, if you do need to pull it out, that flat-ended circlip there, if you wanted to now, you could scribe a mark there and take that circlip out and put it back exactly the same place. There's no trouble doing that if you want to. You just have to know to mark it for yourself. And that way, any timing marks that have been preset, they're there for you. Anyway, there's probably 50 ways to do this pump. This is just how I'm doing it. So I'll clean a few gaskets out now and wash a few parts up and we'll start assembling. On the side of the pump, on every pump there should be a tag, and that tells how much fuel it should have going out, what model pump, what engine it fits and all that. But second from the last, you actually have 4 last numbers. There's a /, and on this one is 9. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. It seems a bit bright. That number there, if you get your springs mucked up under the top cover that we explained about earlier, if you get it mucked up, that number will come in handy, and I'll try and find a printout for you shortly, and we'll put up just to explain how that works if you do get lost. Well, look, I've washed a few parts up. I've washed the housing out. I've cleaned the top cover. We still have to pull the top cover apart yet. And this is the kit we're going to fit in. It's a Sparex part number S57135. And in that kit, it has everything to do the 3-cylinder, the 4-cylinder and the 6-cylinder pump. So whichever pump you have, this kit will do it for you. It's got every gasket and seal you're likely to need, and it even has all the caps to seal all your pipes off. Seal your pipes and your delivery valve washers, steel ones instead of the original copper ones. It has a front shaft seal, and yeah, it's a good kit. It's a great kit for what we're doing. But what we'll do now, before we go much further, we'll pop this top cover apart, which all it consists of is undoing these 2 screws and pulling the stopper and the throttle shaft out. There's 2 O-rings down the tube on these, and yeah, we'll just replace the O-rings and make sure the shaft's not too worn. And it feels good, the shafts don't feel too bad, but in time the O-rings get hard, so just take notice of how everything goes before you pull it apart, and I'll go and get a spanner and we'll undo a couple. Right, 5/16 AF spanner does the job. So there's a small nut, then there's a small shake-proof washer, then there's your throttle shaft. Now your throttle shaft and your stop shaft have a an elongated hole here, and that's how it hops onto the shaft. Then there's a small cup dust seal that goes with the cup downwards. So we can pop that out. Might give this a bit of a wipe so you can see the O-rings. There they are. Can you see that? Yeah, that looks okay. Yeah, you have two O-rings here and a little groove in the centre there, and they just poke up through the housing, and that's what stops the fuel from coming out. So I'll pop this other shaft out as well. We'll tidy up, make sure the housing's cleaned down, the holes. They get a bit of dust and that in them. We'll put new O-rings on and we'll start going back together. There's the stopper shaft. We've just given it a clean up and taken the O-rings off. Now in the kit, there's O-rings for that. And they're a little silver O-ring. Why they're silver, I don't know. Might be something to do with what they're made of. They're not a hard O-ring like a 90 Duromid O-ring. They're just quite a soft one. They're quite easy to put on. And this being the stopper, now on the top cover you have high and low idle screws. So this one's obviously a stopper. So what you look for too is when you put new O-rings on, make sure you can feel them protruding from the shaft so you know they're going to seal. Give that a bit of a twist as it goes in. Now remember that was like that, it was facing upwards. So we'll make that face upwards. We'll put the little dust seal back on. The stopper assembly was facing outwards. The shake-proof washer is there as well. We'll just nip that up. No need to over tighten them, they're only very small bolts, so that works nicely. Still on the close hole, that hasn't moved. I've had no need to take that off. Sometimes it comes off, that's why you like to, you have a look first. Just work that in, you can feel both O-rings. You can feel both O-rings take up on the shaft. As they go in. Right, so we have the shaft sticking out at the top there. There we go again, dust seal on. Shaft on. With the tag down where it will engage with the two screws. So that would give us maximum. That would give us, actually this one would be maximum, this one would be minimum. So a shake-proof washer. And once more, if you had to do this job, just the top cover job, no need to take the pump off. I've given the housing here a little bit of a wash, and I've cleaned any paint off any surfaces, cleaned all the gaskets and that off, and this is our new seal. Now to fit this new seal, we're trying to keep the diesel out of the engine oil, because there's more pressure in this case than there is in the sump or in the crankcase of your engine. So there's a little rubber and a spring. The spring goes down. That always goes down to your fluid that you're trying to seal, or to the pressure. So I'll find a big socket. Lovely. Now when you put a seal in, what you're looking for is that it's even all the way around. It's not kicked up one way. And that looks lovely. Now, you can see on this main drive, there's a dark mark then a silver mark. the silver mark is where the seal's been running. And because the seal's been a little bit hard, it polishes this shaft. So before we go any further with this, we'll get a bit of wet and dry and we'll clean this all up around here. You can actually feel a very slight groove there. We'll polish all that out. We'll make sure that the new seal has a nice new surface to come onto. At this stage, we can put the cam ring back in. Now, you can see where there's a bit of lacquer there, so it's not hard to see which way it goes. Once this goes in, there's a bottom screw that stops it from turning, and you can even see, which is very handy, you can slide this right up against the circlip and get it exactly in the right position. So we'll slide that in and we'll go from there. Now this piece here is the head of the pump, and there's an O-ring around the outside here. That's quite hard on this one. There's a new one in the kit. Make sure you wash everything up, keep it as clean as you can. Make sure there's a little lead going into the housing too. Make sure that's clean. And these rollers have a bit of fuel pressure behind them, and they get pushed out to follow the cam track. And sometimes I pull these apart and have a play with them. I have had pumps where the plunger inside is seized from sitting, and you can pop that apart and get them going again. But the thing to do once more is where these little double hex screws are, that comes off, and this plate here, there's an adjuster. If I can get it in the screen for you. Oh, there's a little mark inside here. You can loosen it off and you can move that inner plate back and forth, and that adjusts the amount of travel that these rollers can have. You don't need to do that unless there's a problem. If I do have to do that, I make sure I scribe a line exactly where it is, and that will put you at the exact same pump setting as you had before. And if you want to hot it up a bit, you can give it a bit more too, but I probably shouldn't be telling you about that. And yeah, but you can mark it. The easiest place to mark it, if you find a mark where you think it'd be good for you, yeah, you go with that one. But you can actually free that plunger up inside, but I probably won't pull that apart today because we've got to remember we're just resealing. We're not doing a full restoration, full repair. We're just resealing it to stop it leaking, and yeah, just to make it serviceable. We're not leaking diesel out onto the ground, and we can reseal it ourselves without having to spend $1,000. Another thing, when we slide this down into the housing, there's a master spline on this one once more, so you can't put it in the wrong spot. Also, our delivery valve, our metering valve was sitting here. So if we have a look around, there's our metering valve hole. So if we started off somewhere around here, we have the metering valve hole there. This hole for the retaining screw lines up here. There's another one, there's the bolt to hold the cam track in. There'll be another bolt holds it here, and there's another bolt holds it here. So you can't really get it wrong. But yeah, just sliding down, and each bolt, put a brand new copper washer on. There's enough in the kit to do the whole lot. So I'll just do this one, I'll come back to you when I've done that little piece. We've bolted all the head in, new copper washers all the way round. So now, I'll put a little bit of WD spray down the plunger. On the fork of your governor here, that sits down into, if you feel down onto your governor housing, you can feel a cutout, then there's two flats across the top. So that sits on those flats, and this metering valve, he just slides down into there. And that has to fit nice and freely. That's sitting down, no worries at all. You can feel it actually ticking back and forth on the side. Now with this plate, there's a plate that holds it all in. And then there's a couple of new lock tabs for the bolts. Now this stopper rod, he has to come through and he locates under the lock tab on this side, and the lock tab acts as a guide. And then as your throttle pulls on the butterfly here, when it needs to stop, he goes in, pushes on the back of the metering valve and turns the metering valve to a place where it lets no fuel through. So he goes in like that, and he has to sit under the lock tab. We have a new top gasket, and the top gasket has little lugs in it, and the little lugs locate around where the bolts are. That sits in there like that. That holds it in place while we put the top on so it's not wiggling everywhere. Now we're back to this little rivet. If you'll recall, when we pulled it apart, the rivet was in the bottommost hole. So you put the rivet back in the hole. It's not hard to drop that, which I've done many a time. I'll try and get the spring hooked in. Right, I've got the spring on, and it is a bit of a fiddle. But when you start to bring the top down, don't forget to try and come around the other side round the back, and line up the stopper. And we'll bring it around to the side where we can see it. You can see under there okay. Just make sure the shaft's right back in. That should be about it there. And that's home. Now on the top, where the bolts go through, there's a couple of quite chunky little washers. They go down over there. And these two acorn nuts go back on. Now these acorn nuts, they've got to be firm, they've got to be fairly tight down. No need to overdo it. That washer was still stuck to that one. Once again, they're only small bolts, you need to nip them up firm. There will be a torque for that. I just nip them down. You can feel when they start to nip up a little bit. If you've got to have them too tight to seal, you've done something wrong. Originally, so you couldn't tamper with the pump, they had little washers, a little piece of wire and a seal through there, and they probably would have lined up something like that. Right, so if we hold that flat out, I think I can feel that stopper coming up against the plunger at the back there. When you hold it flat out, there's a little bit more tension there. So look, I think we've lined it up nicely. Right, we've done full turn, we've turned the pump back around again. Now in the kit there comes a new rubber for the pump here. And that sticks out, you can just feel the protrusion. It's a little bit loose in there, which that's fine, gives us compression. We clean up the pump vanes. And just check they're nice and even on the edges. And that fella goes in like that. This one comes in the other way in the transfer pump. Now I'll just go and wash the end here, we'll assemble that, then pop him on. Now when you clean this housing, down the bottom, right down inside there, usually takes a while to get a fibre washer out, and the fibre washer is on the end of the tube that the plunger goes in. And that's the remains of the fibre, some of the fibre washer here, and often when you pull it out, the washer splits, and some stays with this, and some actually stays in the housing. So just make sure you get all that out. It does take a little bit of getting out. Right, this little plunger, I've just run a bit of 600 wet and dry through, and that little valve, that little plunger in there, is rocking back and forth in there now nicely. It goes down over that sleeve. The plunger is in. Now before we get too carried away with this fella here, remember we had that little spring down the bottom? That little spring, so he goes right down the bottom. There's a recess for it, and yes, we're right there. Right on the money. So now the sleeve here goes down. And you can feel that locate into the bottom of the housing. Now the plunger goes down. The reason I do it like that is because it's not hard for the plunger to drop down the bottom otherwise. Small spring, then we have a new screen. The screen goes down in. You can feel it, you can feel it locating down in on the end of that sleeve. Then there's a big spring with a plunger. And the big spring with the plunger, I'll just make sure all this is sitting down where I'd like it to be. Yep. The big spring, pardon me. The big spring with the plunger goes down that way. And your main fuel delivery nut, it's a brand new copper washer of its own. And there you go. That's that little end plate there finished. So we have to line this little tit here up with the groove. Put these screws in. Now what I often do at this stage is I fill that cavity. You have an arrow on the side here that tells you which way the pump turns. I fill that cavity and I'll try and work a bit of inox or CRC or your favourite poison through the pump. And a couple of reasons. It's got a good bit of lube for when you start it up. And we can actually test it on the bench here and make sure everything's working properly. But what we'll do next is these delivery tubes. They have copper washers on them. We'll clean all this up. We'll put the new steel washers on there we'll sit them on, but we don't tighten them right up. We nip them up, but we leave them loose. And the reason for that is that when we try and line the injection pipes up, if these just got a little bit of movement, it helps the pipe sit in the end there a little bit better. So you get a bit better seal. And then once you know you've got it started and they're just firm, once again you can go and nip these up nice and tight. Right, we'll have a look and see if it's working. And you might think, oh, well, how can you see it working on the bench? But I fill it up with inox or CBC 500 or WD 40, and I actually bleed the pump through a bit. Then when you turn in direction of rotation, you can see it squirting. So we know it's pumping. So now if we pull the stopper on, look at that, it doesn't want to pump anymore. So we'll put a little bit more in again. Push the stopper back off, give us some throttle. And there we go again. So that's how you reseal an injection pump. We'll go and put it on the machine, check the timing, set it back on, and we'll start her up and just make sure everything's right, and we'll show you the tractor running. And yeah, let's hope it's not leaking any fuel. That'll be a bit embarrassing, won't it? But I'm pretty sure she'll be right. But we'll go and do that, and I'll come back to you once I've got it fitted again. Well, that's it. One injection pump resealed. Look, have a go at it. Yeah, it's not too hard. Just bleed her out. Make sure you bleed it first. And normally if you pump the little pump on the other side and just bleed the bottom screw here, that'll get the air out of the main body. Crack a couple of injector lines. I usually crack two easy ones to get to. Down here, it doesn't have to be at the top, it can be at the pump. Just crack them. Wind it over a couple of times. Actually, before you wind it over, pump your little lift pump around the other side and wait till you've got a stream of fuel coming out here with no bubbles in it. You don't want any bubbles. As soon as the bubbles are gone, just nip that up. Then it's time to wind it over again. You crack these two and wind it, and you'll hear it start to fire. You just boom, boom, boom. It wants to go. Stop it and do up your injector lines. Hit the key, and you'll go again. Yeah, and I've been driving it around the paddock this morning, having a bit of fun with it. Nice Sunday morning. So, but anyway, as with all old tractors, there's always something else to do. And I started pouring oil out the front timing seal this morning on my drive around. And anyway, so stay tuned. I might do a video on that, or I'll just pull her off and pop a seal in. We'll just see which way we go with that. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Subscribe. We do lots of stuff, so it's just a Bundy Bear Shed's a bit of a blog on what goes on in the shed, and it can be like this, from fixing or resealing an injection pump to anything at all, splitting a tractor, machining, a bit of milling, a bit of lathe work. And but anyway, look, subscribe and comment, and hopefully we'll all get to know you all a bit better. We'll catch you later, eh?